Welcome to the Boardroom Sessions podcast. In these sessions, we meet the most amazing and interesting people. We learn about their passions, their business models, cool new technologies, and of course, their lessons on personal growth. I hope you enjoy. In this boardroom session, we meet Jay Larson, ex-pro surfer, sportswear industry veteran, and local icon here in Huntington Beach. Jay Larson and I have known each other for years. Our kids have grown up together. And in this podcast, we talk about the state of the union of the sportswear industry in Orange County, the sportswear industry in general, changes in the retail model, the immersion experience. We talk about travel. We talk about what it's like to be a local icon and celebrity. Just kidding. I think Jay is. He may not think he is. But at any rate, I think you'll enjoy this podcast. Jay's awesome, and I hope you enjoy. Jay Larson, welcome to the Boardroom Sessions podcast.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it.
All right. So, Jay, you're a lot of things, man. You're a dad. You're an HB dad. That's how you and I know each other.
Yes.
Kids grow up together. Daughters have been going to school together since they were in kindergarten.
It's crazy, right?
And you're a ex-pro surfer. You're a Huntington Beach icon. You are a surfwear industry and action sports industry veteran, right? And so I don't know anybody in that business who doesn't know you. If I name drop, they all seem to know you, and no one has anything to say bad about you. Everybody has awesome things to say about Jay. So kudos on you for that. But today we wanted to talk a little bit about your role in the action sports industry. A lot of people have the brands, they're wearing the brands, their kids are buying the brands, and we live in the epicenter here of the brand industry. And so we wanted to find out more about that and talk a little bit about that.
Awesome.
So you live here in HB, you've been here your whole life?
I've been here my whole life. Born and raised in HB. I was actually born in Huntington Beach Hospital, which is no longer delivering babies, I don't know, last 20-something years.
Oh, really? They push everybody down to Hogue now?
Yeah, everybody's at Hogue. But my dad still lives in my original house we grew up in, and I live maybe half a mile from him.
Awesome. Yeah. That's great. And so now you're building a family. You've got 3 kids. You've got Lily, JJ, and Duke, all 3 hellions, in my opinion. Athletic and full of energy and hard chargers, and you know, how you keep the kids off the roof from jumping in the pool and stuff like that. I don't know.
It's so much fun, but they're so demanding. Busy, which is good. We keep them busy, but they're amazing.
Yeah, they're a lot like you, I think, from what I hear. And I watch them run around, and I see even your littlest Duke. Your kids have all gotten on a snowboard before they could barely stand.
Pretty
right?
much.
Yeah. And so you've had them in that role. They're living the lifestyle.
Yeah, kids are so resilient at a young age, and they learn everything so quick. So, I mean, why not put them out there when you know they could do it? So, yeah.
For sure. Let's talk a little bit about Ruka.
Yes.
So Ruka's a brand. Here, they're a local brand, or at least they're run local. Where's Ruka headquartered?
They're out of Costa Mesa, so they're just off of 16th Street in Monrovia, kind of.
And how long has the brand been around?
2001, so 18 years, or maybe 2000-ish. Pat had it in his garage, just like all brands. Just a concept. It's just an idea, and he started it. I think around 2000. I was good friends with the owners, Pat Tenori and Conan Hayes, who were the 2 initial owners that started. Pat was the creative side of it. Conan was an ex-pro surfer like me that knew Pat and had some, funds set aside to help invest in. But Pat was the curator. He was the man. And I was at a crossroads coming off of my pro career, trying to figure out like which avenue I wanted to go down to. Had friends in the real estate mortgage business that were, really kind of grooming me to go that way. I did get my license, real estate license, about 17 years ago. But I really loved action sports industry, surf. I wanted to be in it. So it was kind of like, where do I fit in? Do I do the marketing route? Do I just, do behind the scenes? Do I become a rep? I mean, all of these were kind of avenues that at that juncture in time, we're just kind of like, where do I fit in? What makes more sense? So I was the fifth, sixth person hired at Ruka.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was a really tight network. I mean, Pat did everything from design to graphics to whatever. They had he had another designer, Pat Boyd. And then they had a seamstress. We had a sales manager, and we had a marketing guy. So there was really only like 5, 6 guys there, and we were all, doing 10 different jobs each. So the first couple, year and a half, almost 2 years at Ruka, I was the gopher boy, helping in the warehouse, packing boxes, cold calls on the phone, answering in-house sales calls, helping in marketing. Whatever it needed. Go up to drop stuff off the silk screener, go pick up fabric in LA. It was just kind of like everybody was doing everything.
How exciting in a startup environment to have that happen. And obviously making sales at that time is pretty imperative, right? You got to get product out the door, or you're not buying product and you're not employing people like yourself.
Yeah, we didn't have a rep force at the time, and it was just all, relationships and calling on, other friends to kind of like, plant the seed in shops. And it was just kind of a, good old boy network, Hey, there's this new brand and we're trying to push it. And
I've heard it referred to as the bro network.
Yeah.
Right? There's the shops and the sportswear industry, the action sports industry. Everybody knows everybody. You're running a podcast right now with your buddy. And you guys are running a podcast with the shops and the people that you know in the industry and the other companies that are in the industry. So you have an industry-specific podcast called Late Night with Chalky, right?
Yes.
And that's a play on both your nicknames, your Late Night, Jay Larson, and Chalky is Linden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We started this podcast just kind of just talking it out, as well as like, hey, we're both in this industry. We're both reps. We love podcasts. We love, because, podcast is pretty much, whatever you're into.
Mm-hmm.
You could pretty much find, somebody that really knows that sport or industry or product or hobby really detailed. So our feeling of starting this was, we know a lot of people, a lot of interesting people, and, the surf shop culture, the surf shop, history is kind of the backbone of the action sports, or, the surf industry in specific. But yeah, we came from surf and sport. I met Lyndon when we were, when I was just 14 being sponsored, and he was working there, and
he was working at Huntington.
He was working at Surf and Sport. Yeah. Right. And when I became old enough to work at Surf and Sport at 16, we worked together and we just clicked it off. We loved ping pong. We played a ton.
Yeah, I hear you.
Hours and hours and hours.
Quite the ping pong player.
Love it. And so we became really good friends. I was the best man in his wedding, and he was one of my groomsmen. And we just created this bond at an early age, just because of the love of surf and like-minded stuff. And with us both being reps, we know, and the history coming from working in the surf shops, we know the importance of surf and surf shop and core business.
Yeah.
And we wanted to kind of give back, but also, let the consumer know that they have options out there. They have options from core retail, they have options to corporate retail, and they have online options. So we kind of want to emphasize on stores and surf shops specifically about how, these are local community shops.
Yeah.
And they're supporting, the mom and dads. They're supporting the local high school. They're supporting, all the fundraisers and stuff.
And so for the people that don't know or have never been to Huntington Beach, the Huntington Surf and Sport is a multi-location company, right? They have locations on Huntington Beach is one of the biggest little towns you've ever been to, and the fact that geographically it's dispersed. And so HSS, as we call it, has shops on all 3 corners of the town, right? So the north side up at the Bella Terra by the freeway, over at the edge of Seal Beach, right? And then right there in the middle of the heart of it at downtown on Main Street. But they grew up. Aaron started that business here in Huntington Beach and grew it from nothing to something. When they were selling shops and wetsuits and T-shirts, right?
Yeah, it's one of the most iconic surf shops in the world, for sure.
And so now if you come down to Huntington Beach and visit it in the middle of summer, you're likely to see contest signing. You'll see pros out in front with posters signing autographs. You'll see big sales out front where they drag all the racks out front for all the the discontinued items or whatever they're trying to wholesale off. And it's a mob scene, but there's everything you can think of from surfing, from the boards to the leashes, which I think you guys call hardware, right?
Yeah, hard goods. Yeah,
hard goods, all the way down to the latest in the brands and the brand new. My kids know when new brands are coming out and new products coming out, because they go and they'll go by the surf shop, check it out.
Yeah, I mean, the surf shops really have, just like in any industry, they need newness, but they also need the brands that are going to pay the bills. Newness is cool, kind of, you need that new cycle of up and coming emerging brands, but you also need those staples, and supporting. And, a lot of these surf brands, whether it's a Quicksilver or Billabong, Rip Curl, Volcom, these have been in business almost 30, 40, 50 years on some of them. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of history there and a lot of good partnerships with the retailers and stuff. So they have a really good connection and they stay relevant. They use these surf shops and they know what sells and what works. They stay on trend with new stuff. So, even though they've been around so long, they're still relevant because they're putting a lot of marketing back into the youth and re-educating that new Grom, new customer.
Yep. We call the young kids Groms, by the way.
Yeah.
So Grom's a surfing term for the little guys, the guys that are sub-teens. I think they use sub-teenagers are what we typically call Groms. And those are the kids that have a real stoke for surfing. They're very much into it. And they're very loyal to a brand and they're very loyal to their lifestyle. They're not fair weather. If mom bought them some clothes and they don't like it, they're not going to wear it. They're going to figure out another way to get what they want on their back. And that's a true Grom. And we both have Groms. Jay has 3. I have 3. We have some kids that are very much like that. So and to me, it's near and dear to my heart. I grew up in the surf shop. Before we had a VCR in my house, we had a VCR at the surf shop that played surf movies over and over and over. And so I know I'm dating myself right now for everybody here, but that's the reality of how it was for me. And as a kid, when there was not waves, we would skateboard to the surf shop and we would hang out on the couch and watch Off the Wall 2 and these movies over and over and over till the tape literally broke. And so we had to go buy another tape and bring it to the surf shop because we had watched it so many times. The machine ate it up.
Yes.
And that's how it was for us. And, we all helped sell boards and wetsuits to the people that came in the shop. We would mob scene somebody who looked like a buyer and tell them what to buy. And that shop mentality and that whole scene is really near and dear. And so we're very loyal to the shop scene. And so I like that you and Lyndon are bringing that back and giving some history. So check out the Late Night with Chalky podcast and you'll get some history on these surf shops and these brands. We're going to go into a little bit on the action wear industry. That's the meat of the podcast here. But let's go back and talk a little bit about Jay Larson. So being here in Huntington Beach and knowing you as a fellow dad raising a daughter. I mean, we swap daughters back and forth at each other's house all the time, so that's how we've known each other. But underlying there, I've known who you were. I mean, I go to my my sports therapist and get a massage, and there's videos playing with Jay Larson surfing. I've known who you were for quite a long time. Your pictures are up in the surf shops, and you were captain of the HB high school surf team in the heyday when you guys were dominating the. And yes, there is a surf team for those of you that are from the Midwest or back east and haven't seen that happen. You can get a varsity letter in surfing in Southern California. And Huntington High School was an icon in that world. We were dominant in that area.
Yeah. I was a HB Grom. It's embedded in surf such an early age. My dad surfed, my older brother surfed, and I grew up on the beach, literally. And when you're a Grom, you don't really get into the contests super quick. You kind of just want to learn how to surf. There's a ton of youth events and contests that you can participate in. And, when you hit that junior high school level is when you kind of really kick into gear with, traveling up and down the coast, competing, getting yourself ready to, make it to high school to where, you want to make the surf team there. But yeah.
When did it become competitive? Do you remember when it went from like hanging out at the beach to I think I'm gonna pop an air, or I'm gonna bash that lip better than the next kid? And when did that happen? Or was it a contest kind of thing? Was it like, hey, the local contest is coming up, I'm gonna enter that?
I think it was always the competitiveness. It was always there, even though you weren't having a jersey on and there wasn't a contest. Like you're out in the water and, your friends, you see a friend get a good wave and see a friend rip it. And you're like, oh, I want to do better than him. And so it was more just amongst your peers and friends. And there was being Huntington Beach and the focal point of surf community, there was a lot of surf contests. And yeah, you wanted to, obviously, do well in the events, but outside of just getting your trophy, they would have these awesome prize packs that you would get during the final if you made to the finals, which were all supplied by all the local industry companies, the surf shops and stuff.
They wanted you to wear their brands. They wanted that ripping kid who won the contest to wear their stuff.
So you might, as a 12-year-old, you might, get third. Contest cost your parents, $20 or $30. You got a contest T-shirt, but if you made the final, you're usually getting this like gift bag with maybe a new leash, a traction pad, wax, a hat, a backpack. Who knows? It could just be an assortment of stuff. And for a kid that's 12 doing something and he's going out and it's like, oh, here's your ribbon, but also here's this, awesome prize pack
swag
of gear.
Bag, full of stuff.
There's a lot of incentive.
Yeah. And so then that started with the local contests, and there's a couple of different groups, right? What were the groups then? Like I know there's NSSA and there's WSA and there's all these.
Yeah, those were still primarily the two top organizations for youth, and then there's some local CCSA, which was Calvary Chapel Surfing Association, but WSA.
NSSA is National Scholastic Surfing Association, right?
Yep.
So you have to be a student.
Yeah, you have to be a student, and you had to have 2.0 GPA, which is a C's. You get they make sure you show up to school. But yeah, they organized it as a West Coast, East Coast division, and there was a Hawaii division. So you would compete regionally in your wherever you're located, and then at the end of the year they would have a national event. So you're competing against the best of from everywhere.
So did you start surfing competitively in junior high school? Was there the Dwyer surf team? Were you a Dwyer guy?
Yeah, I was a Dwyer guy, and that's our 6th through 8th junior high here. I want to say maybe 5th going into 6th was probably when I started.
Okay.
They have a division called Mini Hoonies, which
it's a Hawaiian name, right?
Hawaiian name, and that was at 12 and under. So I do remember competing and getting. I have some trophies still to this day somewhere packed in a box of the Mini Hoonie division. And, it was really small. There wasn't a ton of kids. You're usually competing against the same 5 or 6 kids because, there wasn't a lot of youth in that division. But once you hit the next one, the 13 to 14 or 13 to 15, depending, that's when, everything got stepped up quite a bit.
Right.
So I started off like pretty well in the Mini Hoonie. Like I felt like I had a good grasp and got the confidence booster, getting, first, second, thirds in the first couple of years of the contest. But again, the surfing pool was really small. When I jumped to the 13 to 15, I was getting waxed.
Really?
I was getting.
Were they local kids or were they kids from other towns? What was the scenario?
Yeah, it's mostly kids from all over, So our division would pretty much be LA, if not, Ventura, Santa Barbara, all the way to San Diego. Mm-hmm. And then they'd have a Northern California, which would kind of be San Luis Obispo to Santa Cruz or in that kind of area. So they kind of divided up California. Coast. Yeah. So I would compete anywhere from Ventura Harbor to Imperial Beach, like every weekend, depending on where that contest.
So your parents were dedicated. This is for most parents, they can relate. And in you, for example, with Lily, you're driving to water polo meets, and before that it was soccer meets and things. It's the same thing, except you're going to a beach to hang out all day, waiting for heats, and you make a heat, then you go to you go to the brackets and find out when the heat is that you'll be in next. And there
were 2-day contests for the most part. So you would surf 2 or 3 times on a Saturday and 2 or 3 times on a Sunday, depending on the amount of people in your division. But yeah, it was a whole weekend a deal, and it could be anywhere. So lots of carpooling, lots of switching off with other parents, and trying to partner up with, the kids in the men's division that had, that were 16 and had a car. Back then, you could just, no seatbelt laws. You just pile, 10 kids in the back of a truck or van.
And that would be a surf team. HB's in the house.
Yeah.
Right? So at what point did you get a sponsor, and did the sponsorship start to become a thing where you're competing and now you're surfing on somebody's board and you're wearing somebody's wetsuit? I remember as a kid growing up at my beach town up in Port Hueneme, you were nothing unless you had a sponsor give you something for free, right?
Yeah, the sponsorship, I mean, as a kid was just, the pride and joy of having that sticker and being connected to a larger organization. And, when you're competing at an amateur level, it gets pretty expensive, for the parents. You're talking contests every weekend, and some events range from $25 to $75, and that's every weekend, and the travel and stuff. So getting sponsored was a huge relief for my parents, because part of the amateur contract was, hey, we're going to outfit you with clothes and stickers, whatever gear you need, but we're also going to cover your expenses for the contest. So that was huge. Was
that new to your folks? Were they having to sign a contract to get gear? Was that kind of a foreign thing for your pops to take a look, or was he like all in, like, this is great, where do I sign?
I think in the early mid 80s it was kind of a foreign thing. They were just, wait, what? People are going to give you clothes and they're going to help pay for stuff?
Exactly.
Okay, this is cool. But yeah,
and you got to sign a contract, and you can't wear any other clothes. You got to wear my clothes only.
Yeah,
this kind of thing.
Yeah, it was awesome.
That's cool. And that bred a whole, and it's still going on in a major way. Now it's just become big business with agents and all that kind of stuff going on now.
Yes.
So, okay, fast forward through high school, right? So Huntington High School is the epicenter of high school surfing as a sport, right? You competed with all the schools up and down the coast. They all had teams. Who was the coach at that time?
Andy Verdone was our coach, and he still is there.
The coach?
Yeah, he's still the coach. Actually saw him yesterday morning.
He coached Luke when Luke was there, and I recall, and I'd still see him on the beach in the mornings down there, south side.
Yeah, I talked to him yesterday morning. They're sending a group of surfers down to Costa Rica for a trip, which they help cover, and they do some fundraising and stuff. So he's really involved on getting the youth to do some travel, and as a HB high school group. But every year they plan a big trip to either South Africa or Australia, and they take the team to go expose them and compete against the local youth in those countries. So It's a good organization.
So you lettered in surfing.
I did, yeah. We were CIF champs, and we also competed at the nationals level as well. And yeah, I mean, Huntington dominated for years and years and years, really strong. There's San Miguel at Encinitas that was, came along and started, doing really well. San Clemente was another high school that did really well. But I think we're still in the top few guys.
Yeah, it varies with the surfers, right? But very competitive. So at what point did that start to take on a life of its own, where you were in high school and you're thinking, wow, I might be able to actually make a run at this and go on some big trips? When was your first paid trip?
I think I did two trips to Australia with Huntington Beach High School, my freshman year, my junior year. And so it was kind of like every other year we would go there, and then we would host. So we had a really good relationship with
Those were going to a contest though, right? Or were they just free surf?
It was kind of a free surf, but in Australia they'd have what they call board riders, which we're now doing here in America, and it's a community ran clubhouse for surf. So each town would have their clubs, and they would compete against each other. They didn't have the NSSAs over there, or the WSAs, but what they did is they had the board riders clubs, and they would compete, and they'd organize events between one city and the other, or a group of cities and stuff. So that was the kind of amateur upbringing.
Okay.
So we would go over there. We would travel the coast from Sydney, even south of Sydney, Wollongong area, all the way up to Brisbane. And we would stay with, 10 different families throughout 3 weeks in each town, and we compete against the local board riders club. So
that's cool.
Yeah, it was really cool because when I went there, we got, you get paired up with families over there, and you get to see like, the hottest surfers out of Australia at the time. And, we're 15 years old. And a lot of these surfers that we went and stayed with, I ended up now like competing with on the professional tour level,
right,
because they were the best of Australia, from Danny Wills to Sasha Stalker. These are all 80s pros and or 90s pros. And yeah, it was really cool to meet those relationships back when we were just in high school, in the youth, and then see them a few years later on the professional tour. It's cool.
That's awesome. And so when you graduated from high school, what was there? I mean, was it all when kids are going to off to college or what have you? Was it dead set in your mind that you were going to make a run at surfing?
I would say, around 14, 15, it was still a dream and a goal to become a pro surfer. And I feel like that, around 16 is kind of, you got to make that decision of, do I really have what it takes? Am I going to get the support from the sponsors? Am I doing well enough in the competitive scene? Because the competitive side of the business, had a big factor. Nowadays, there's lifestyle surfers, guys that don't even ever compete, but they could still make a living.
That's new.
But
that wasn't at the time that you were going through this. It was about competing, right? It was about competing and winning in the contest scene.
Yeah, for sure. And around 16, I felt like, I was doing really well on the amateur. I was pretty much making all the national finals every year. I was dominating, the amateur ranks here. There was a professional Pro-Am tour in California at the time. It was the Bud Tour, and it changed to Panasonic. The headline sponsors changed, but it was a amateur pro. It was a pro tour, but they let amateurs surf in it. And I started competing in those in my junior year. I think I did 2 or 3 of them, and did all right, So then my next year I was a senior, and I really wanted to focus, that was kind of your bridge, your gap of, before you go and do the world travel, can you prove yourself at the domestic level? Mm-hmm. So my senior year, I didn't want to pull out of high school because I, really wanted to, graduate in class and do the Huntington Beach High School surf team. But we had to work with some teachers and the principal and everybody to allow me to miss quite a few days.
To do the travel, to make those contests.
They were all in California. There was one in the East Coast and a couple in Hawaii. But throughout the year, you're missing numerous days at a time. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so I wasn't pro, but my senior year, I really kind of took full stride on the domestic tour, and did really well for my rookie year. And that was kind of, at some point during that year is when, the sponsors started saying, okay, hey, look, we're going to, not just cover your expenses and your travel and your contest, but we're going to start paying you as well. And I was just like, okay, yes, where do I sign? Please, thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah. So
who were those early sponsors?
At the time, it was Quicksilver. They were my primary amateur sponsor, which at the time, clothing, is your main sponsor, would say. Mm-hmm. Kind of, if you're, NASCAR, any other sport with multiple stickers, that would be, clothing would be your main sponsor. They would get the premier spot. They would pay you the most. They would, take care of you the most, because they were the ones that had all the capital, and they would make stuff from head to toe, pretty much.
Right.
Then you'd have sunglass sponsors, I had Oakley at the time, and you'd had, some people would have footwear, whether it's a sandal or a shoe company, surfboard shaper.
When these folks all approached you, it wasn't like you had to go sell yourself to these folks and write letters to Oakley to say, hey, I want to wear your brand, sponsor me. Obviously you want to wear something or put something on that you're
you have a connection with and you're proud to wear. So yeah, there's kind of a, do I have options? Yeah, there might be options out there, but I really identify and I really like this brand for what they stand for. So you kind of try to, guide yourself into that, that route.
How amazing to say, I like your brand. Hey, Yvonne Chenard of Patagonia, I like your brand logo. I wear your stuff. I'd like to stop paying for it, have you deck me from head to toe.
Yeah.
And pay my contest fees.
Yeah. And they didn't realize that they were also outfitting my dad and my brother and a lot of my friends too.
Sure. But they're all brand loyal, so that's awesome.
Yeah.
So when did it go pro? When did this whole thing start to, obviously you're already taking money as a sponsored athlete, but when did it go pro where you started entering contests where there was money on the line?
Yeah, so we were allowed to, at amateur, there was I don't know the exact dollar, but there was an amount that you're allowed to collect. If not, it went to like an escrow, like a savings account until you did turn pro. But there was an allowance that you were able to like take that funds and use for travel and use for personal expenses. And I remember, I think signing, a contract with Quicksilver. I don't know, maybe I think just before around my 18th birthday. So
okay.
Yeah,
all right,
somewhere around there.
Awesome. And then it all begins, right? Then so you start in trying to make the tour, right? So for those that don't know the surfing, there's the WCT. Was
Yes.
that it, right? That's the World Surfing Tour. That's the big time. That's the PGA. That's the NASCAR.
Yep.
That's the
elite.
The elite tour, right? And
Yep.
so that's always the end game, is to get on that tour and to make your way.
Yeah, so at the time there was that elite tour was made up of 44 surfers. Every year they took the top 32 that seeded, and then they'd scramble out the 16 lower seeds, and they would bring up 16 from the qualifying tour, the top 16. So
Okay.
there was an ever changing, and of course, if you're on the world tour, you can compete in both tours, to kind of give yourself a backup plan, which a lot of the surfers did, or they just wanted to compete because, maybe the contest was convenient or was in a good spot. In Hawaii, for instance, the Pipe Masters was the only like world tour event, but there was 2 or 3 other qualifying events. So of course, so you would get even though we're in a qualifying tour, you'd still compete against, the top surfers in the world. But yeah, it was very challenging. There was 30 or 40 events worldwide that you could pick and choose, and some had different ratings, different point structures based on the prize purse and stuff. So you try to map out, okay, where do I want to go? What's financially feasible? What schedule is feasible? And you start trying to map out like which contest you want to do for the year.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so when did you make it?
So I jumped on a tour straight out of high school. So I did the domestic tour, and that was kind of in a stage. A domestic tour was having trouble with corporate sponsors, so that was kind of like at the time starting to kind of go away. They'd still have a few events, but they were going from 12 domestic events down to like 2 or 3. So
wow.
It forced us to have to travel, and the tour started in South America, then it went to like Australia, then it went to some South Pacific islands, and it went to like, South Africa, Europe, back to Hawaii. I mean, it was everywhere,
Wow.
So I spent, a good 4 years on the qualifying tour at what I would say full capacity, going for that, the world tour. And came close a couple years, but never, sustained that 16th, position to hop on, which was unfortunate. It was definitely a goal of mine as my, in my career, but it, I gave it my all, and it just wasn't meant to be.
But let's talk about the benefits of those years of traveling around the world, right? So surfing on the qualifying tour and going all over. As a guy who is an avid surfer, reading those magazines as a kid and seeing those spots, you got to go and have them to you and 3 other guys. Right?
Yeah. So, the amazing thing with being a professional surfer is at the time, you had the competitive side of the business, but the magazines needed content for their stories. You know, they can only cover so much of the competitive scene. By the time the magazines did the story on the surf contest, there was 5 other events that just went through. So they really needed that editorial side of the business to talk about stories and these classic like destinations and true surf stories. So I really kind of split my time doing the tour, and then, you know, split my time doing these editorial like magazine trips,
Right.
or video trips with like certain videographers that made surf movies. So that was the balance that I had. Some people only had the competitiveness, and at the time there wasn't really that kind of lifestyle surfer. It was kind of, you know, at that time in the early 90s, mid 90s, it was you still had to do the contests,
Right.
you know, to stay relevant. But I went on a ton of magazine trips where they were like, hey, we want to go to this exotic destination. It's never really been like exposed, or, you know, we've only had, you know, a few people like show up there. So they would
Like
really,
where? Give us some examples.
Ireland,
Ireland,
you know, like,
right?
yeah.
Go surf a slab in Ireland.
Yeah, you know, they're like, hey, we're going to put together a trip for Ireland, you know, would you be down? I'm
Take
like,
some photo shots from the cliffs, the green cliffs, right?
yeah.
Wetsuits had to do with
It was
booties
cold.
and
It was cold,
hoodies.
but you know, you're surfing and you're looking at these, you know, castles on the beach and coastline, and just the most amazing people. And it was very, yeah, it was. I mean, it wasn't your typical like surf destination.
So these guys are the magazines and the videos. They're making money on the end game, so they're paying up front for you to go. They're giving you room and board on a, you know, world class vacation, to send you there so they can take photos and content, and then they'll publish it later, right?
Yeah.
And so they have somebody that can rip, that's got a smile, that's cool, that people may know.
Yeah.
That's how fortunate that is. And now we call that lifestyle surfing.
Yeah.
Then there's some folks out there, you know, Rob Machado comes to mind, and others that have Donovan and these other cats that have made a career and made a really good living. I mean, exceptionally good living. Encinitas waterfront, beachfront houses, living on being lifestyle surfers. And so there's definitely business for that. But what I want to ask you about, most people take it for granted now that you can go to your phone or an app and see 7 days out what the surf's going to look like at any given surf spot on the horizon, right? Yeah. You can just look anywhere and see what it's going to be like in a week or so. When I was growing up, that wasn't the case. No. You had to be an amateur meteorologist to try and figure out swell windows, storm patterns, you know, history of August and this region, you know, over the last few years, and what's likely going to happen. So when they were making these trips to Ireland or whatever, were there times where you knew there was surf, or were there times where you just hoping for surf?
It's kind of both. I mean, you're always hoping, but you're going during the time of year that is likely. You know, they're like, hey, this is the time of year, and usually it's, you know, if you're coming to Southern California, you would say best time of year is fall. You know, you're still getting, you know, the weather's in that
August,
transition,
September, October.
Yep. And so there's certain times of the year at certain places,
high pressure.
Yeah, that the, you know, weather is more favorable because it gets windy and rainy there. But I mean, it, you know, that was a little bit more extreme in places like Ireland. But once you get to more around the equator, you know, in the more tropical regions, it's pretty much all year round. It's pretty similar. It's either wet or dry season.
But now I've seen countless movies and videos where the kids are, you know, 16, 17-year-old kids are sitting in their house and they get a call from the sponsor, hey, pack your bags tomorrow, we're leaving, or even more, 4 or 5 days out, and we're going to leave, get your plans ready. And they know, because they're looking at the swell windows, that there's going to be waves. They show up at some place like a Tavarua, Fiji, or some island off the Mentawais in Indonesia, and they know that although it's 1 foot today, tomorrow they're going to wake up and it's going to be firing. Yeah,
there was a quite a bit of trips that were kind of last minute for sure. But a lot of it was just, hey, go and spend some time there. You know, it was kind of, a lot of it was our own personal connection with photographers and sponsors and stuff. So, you know, the magazines would set up these, you know, editorial trips, so they could write a story about it, and it would be a selective group, and it would be, you know, all kind of organized. But as you develop relationships with photographers, and they knew they could sell your images back to the magazines, back to your sponsors and stuff. So I was getting calls all the time from professional photographers. I'd be like, hey, I like traveling with you. You're easygoing. You rip. I know I could sell your product, your images really easy.
Yeah.
So I started connecting a lot with just specific photographers that we worked well together,
That's great.
traveled well together, and it wouldn't even be like organized through the trip, but we would go do these trips and then sell it to them
Right.
almost. We would say, hey, it would kind of be on our dollar, our time. We didn't have to be anywhere at any specific time. And that's what I really enjoyed, because it gave us a lot more freedom, kind of gave us a bigger window, kind of gave us an opportunity to kind of like...
It's easier on them, and they're putting everything together. And if they want to travel with somebody they like traveling with, it's cool. That good ping pong player, maybe help them win in a ping pong match.
Maybe.
Ping pong's a big deal on traveling, right?
Yeah, but a lot of these tour events were also in exotic places where there's good surf. So we would, if we're going to Australia, they would have a lineup of 3 or 4 contests. I would show up 2 or 3 weeks early, and I would stay 2 or 3 weeks later. That would give us opportunity of, hey, if I didn't do well in the contest, I could still make this a productive trip,
right.
By connecting and going in some content on the video or photo side. So a lot of the surf tour also ended up splitting my time and doing that kind of photo and video side of the business. Mm-hmm. And as I wasn't competing at the level, and consistency I wanted to, I started realizing, like, I'm having the most fun kind of doing this more, lifestyle surfing. And I approached my sponsors, and they were saying, like, dude, we don't care. You're getting plenty of content in the videos and the magazines. You can do whatever you want. It's not going to change what we pay you, So I kind of flipped the script and went, cool. I'll compete at a couple of events here and there. Took a lot of pressure off. And
awesome.
Then I really got to kind of go back to a lot of places I maybe visited.
So you straddled both. You were both a contest surfer and a lifestyle surfer.
Yeah.
Right? That's fantastic.
Yeah. And a lot of people kind of said, like, why did you kind of prematurely, because I didn't retire based on my ability, like, oh, I'm kind of old and I'm not up to par. But I was, traveling a lot, not having a home base. It's kind of, you're living out of your bags, and it's great for so long. But I didn't want to be a washed up, pro with nothing to fall back on. So I kind of wrapped it up a little early, because I knew it wasn't going to last forever. So that's when Ruka came into,
and that's a familiar path, right?
Yeah.
The Ruka might not have been your sponsor at the time, but you knew the guys and got into it and became part of the family.
Oh, they were my sponsor at the time.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
but they didn't pay me because they didn't have any money.
Oh, right. But that's the familiar path, right? That's like if I were going to draw a script for the pro surfer story, it'd be when they retire, they go to work for their sponsor, right?
Yeah, for sure. And it was a bittersweet kind of decision. I knew I could still do some traveling, and the first couple of years at Ruka, I was still able to keep a handful of other sponsor money coming in from, surf to wetsuits to shoes, sunglasses, and some other stuff to kind of offset where Ruka, being such a young brand, didn't have the funds to sponsor, and I was working there. So it's more of like an internship, and, coming off of that, pro career and collecting all that, sponsorship money to kind of like phasing into reality was definitely a hard transition, but I knew it was going to happen eventually, where am I going to go? My dad is a finished woodworker, and I really admire and loved, growing up in the wood shop of that side of the business, and I watched his own boss. That's his passion, and it's super fun. I'm like, wow, that'd be kind of cool to do. So I was like, do I go do that? Or had friends in the mortgage and real estate side of the business. And, they're like, oh, come work for me, and then, I had the surf options, and I could have gone and worked for any other brand, could have been a sub rep for another, veteran rep. But Ruka these are my friends. It's small. I thought it was, where most kids go to college to kind of, put their 4 years in. I'm like, well, this is my internship. This is my kind of college degree here, learning about the ins and outs of the day-to-day business. And as the company grew and I looked at, do I go marketing route? Do I stay in, do I try to focus on the sales route? And we needed reps at the time to service the accounts that we kept opening up. So
just seems like a natural fit for me. I mean, obviously you're in the role now, but I mean, it seems like a natural fit for me with your personality, your background, your likability, your history in the business to be the brand rep, right? So walk us through, for those that don't know, walk us through the mechanics of a brand rep, right? You drive around in a Sprinter van, right?
And a Prius.
And you're charging all over a big territory with lots of product. Your garage is a warehouse full of product. For those of you that don't know, Jay has the funnest garage you've ever seen. Snowboards, surfboards, bikes, and unbelievably cool clothes. So
yeah, hit me up if you're a medium and 32.
That's me, man. That's me.
But yeah, so sales reps, we call them territory managers, or at least that's what our management calls us. And essentially they give us a outline of a territory. Usually it's broken by freeway systems, deserts, some sort of geography, like kind of area. So my territory is LA, which is Los Angeles, Southern Nevada, which is Vegas, and Arizona. So, and it depends on the kind of the density of the account base. Bases on how broad, like, our Texas rep, he covers like 6 states, our Midwest, they, depends on,
density,
the density, and California being the epicenter, of 40 million people, but also the action sports industry. There's a really dense, account base. So I start, Seal Beach, up to Santa Barbara, and then all the way into the deserts. I cover Mammoth, and like I said, Vegas and all of Arizona. So, and
you even have a pad in Mammoth, so you can stay there when you're doing business. And there's air quotes there, doing business.
Business in Mammoth. I got to go ride the mountain with some, some of my accounts and go shred the slopes.
That's right. So you're out there. You're the brand ambassador. You're carrying product to those folks, making sure that you have competing for space on their floors at their surf shops or at their retail establishments.
Yeah. So, why I say we're territory managers is we're not just selling in product. We're seeding, kids in the shop, maybe local surfers or skateboarders or whatever. We're making sure we have, obviously product in the shop. If there's window opportunities for marketing, if there's light boxes inside store, POP, point of purchase, like visible images, making sure that we're showcasing the brand at the best of our ability.
You're doing all the best retail tricks to get maybe the best corner or the best aisle with all your product and building out the build outs. And
you're constantly visiting stores, and every store is different. There's some that don't even operate on software systems, and it's, you got to show up and physically do some count and fill or call it out. Some people, some shops run systems and they send me reports and I can analyze that and put together suggested orders. But our being in a clothing business, it's fast fashion, it's fast trends. You got to stay on top of it. So most apparel brands will have and develop 4 seasons a year. Spring, summer, fall, and holiday. Mm-hmm. So there's an ever-changing product assortment that we gotta get placed in the store. So a lot of product, a lot of SKUs. So what we do as reps is the company develops a line plan, a sheet. We go sell that into the store. Buyer or manager or owner is like, here's this next season. What would you like out of this? We need a pre-order so we can build the product properly. So it was a lot of forecasting and a lot of pre-ordering. Mm-hmm. So they physically get to check out the samples that we bring, see the color, the graphic, the fabric, and they get to kind of touch, feel, and see. They base their buying on performance, on trend, on So of course, as in sales, you're always looking for increases, and you got to call out the buyer, say, hey, you didn't buy this last season, it did really well at these accounts, like you should buy it in. And there's certain product categories that don't change a lot, one graphic tee to another. I mean, it comes on color and print, but if it's a twill pant, like a khaki or a black, doesn't really change. So those type of commodity items, we try to stay in stock at all times. We call it like our legacy, products. So there's a lot of different like categories and product assortments that might work, for some people. But at the same time, you're trying to put newness in there and get the consumer to come in and buy.
And a lot of that, I could just think, I was hearing you walk through some of that. A lot of that, you're going to get some good information from your kids, right? Your kids and your kids' friends. And living here in Huntington Beach is a little bit of a cheat, I guess, because we're right in the middle of it. And I know my daughter and your daughter in particular, not to call them both out on media here, but they're very particular in what they wear, right? Your daughter a little less because you're sponsoring her with Ruka gear, but my daughter has absolute say in what she wears, right? She will only wear what she thinks is cool and not cool, and you get a chance to see what's happening, what's cool and what's different and new and all of that.
Yeah, no, it is. It's true. Like the youth, definitely drive a lot of the business for sure.
Even the boys. I mean, people think of the stereotypical surf kid with his, big moppy blonde hair running around at the beach, in t-shirts and jeans, ratty jeans. That's a look. That it may look like it's a thrown together outfit, like the kid doesn't care about what he's wearing. He's just a beach bum. That is absolutely a thought out, well placed. He knows exactly what jeans he's wearing, what the brand tag is on the jeans. He knows what t-shirt he's wearing, whether that brand is cool or not cool, because his friends are going to tell him if that brand's not cool, right?
For sure. Yeah. And I mean, these kids, they're all individuals, and even though they may be wearing similar brands, whether they're wearing Vans or some sort of branded shirt, they're going to put their own spin on it, but they do care about, I mean, our industry is not cheap product. I mean, it's well-made product. It's, it's probably some of the best out there. It's not, the pricing is not for those that are just sitting there like looking to put just a t-shirt on. They want a reason to wear it, and a lot of it ties back to the branding and the brand message and, the sport that they're into.
Let's talk about the industry here for a second. We're in Huntington Beach right now, and this is the epicenter of the action sports business, right? And it has been for a really long time, right? I think of within a 10-mile radius of where we're sitting right now, we have Hurley, Quicksilver, Volcom, Billabong, Ruka, corporate offices. If you expanded that out to 20 miles, you'd get Oakley and many, many others. Stance is a company that's come from nothing to something quickly. They make socks, for those of you who don't know. And I've seen them in Middle America. I was in Nashville. I've seen them in Vegas. They've got big sock displays all over the place. And that's a local company coming from something to nothing. And a perfect example of the question I'm going to ask. How hard is it to start a brand and become something? I mean, there's a lot of competition, obviously, but these companies have done it, right? I heard the Billabong stories. I've read the magazines and seen, the back in the 80s of the companies that came and made it here in Huntington Beach from nothing to something.
Yeah, very few have made it. It's a very challenging business financially, and like I said, when you're dealing with fast fashion and trends and staying relevant, it's really difficult to constantly not reinvent yourselves, but to stay at a really high level.
Yeah, Ruka's been doing it for a while, man. I mean, when I think about it, one of the big stories that comes to mind, the success stories from nothing to something to big time company to irrelevant today is Gotcha, right? Like, so the Gotcha story, local story, Laguna Beach transplants from South Africa, weren't they? The brothers. And they crushed it in the 80s. And it was a big brand, and they went mainstream, and they had ads out in every major magazine with their gear, and then they're irrelevant today. They're not even on the map.
Nothing. Yeah, OP. I mean, there's a handful of companies that have come and gone. And, those that have kind of weathered the storms or the, the recessions or the changing of the business model and the athletes, whatever you could pinpoint. I mean, I don't think there's one one philosophy of why they failed or why something why people make it or companies make it, but it's a very challenging industry for sure.
Yeah. And there's a lot of disruptors right now. You and I were talking about before we started the podcast here. The industry itself is always, like every other industry, changing, right?
Yeah.
And there's some major changes coming. And so Ruka, for example, I've always known Ruka for being in the surf shops, right? I just saw retail. You guys have a shop in the Mission Viejo Mall.
Yeah, so we call those our flagship stores. We're very strategic on those locations. Usually they're in epicenters of where we could really have a great community involvement. We started in San Francisco, Haight-Ashbury, which is like the kind of, the hipster section of the city for that, art district and just kind of, everything cool. So we really focused on how do we get the community involvement, and with part of our, DNA as a brand, the Artist Network program is that it separates us from a lot of the other surf brands. It's something that Pat Snorri, the creator of Ruka, kind of implemented at the very early stages of the brand. So we're not just putting out surf skate, apparel. He wanted to put out product with art and, art focus and not brand focus to kind of just balance out, what we're about. And so, we opened up flagships in LA, was downtown, or not downtown, but like it was off of like Melrose area. Then we relocated that to Venice.
Okay.
We have one in Australia in Byron Bay, maybe a couple there now somewhere in Australia. I'm not 100% sure. And we're starting to open up a few more. Mission Viejo is in our backyard. It was a kind of an area where we know there's a ton of surf, our lifestyle community, but there wasn't any distribution in that area that we felt like it was a void, so
that's an upscale mall. It's got a lot of high-end retail in there. And so it makes sense. I see it, and there's not a lot of cheap surf shops in the mall there, and I see it happening, and I see Hurley's doing it. Other folks are doing this retail model now where they're coming out. That's new for the brand.
Yeah, for us it's new, and like I said, I don't think it's something where they've seen other brands almost put them out of business, or it has put some out of business by going too heavy into the vertical retail.
Too fast, too quick.
Well, retail's there's a lot of overhead, a lot of overhead. So it's got to make sense. You got to see a return.
Long-term leases on those things, and you got to hire a bunch of employees to staff it. Right? There's all kinds of costs involved in it.
And
Quicksilver went big for a while and pulled back quickly, and luckily they had the wherewithal to stay, but they almost got burnt in a big retail push.
For sure. Yeah. Them and Billabong, and Rip Curl has a ton of stores, and they're needed. I think what's great about those corporate retail stores is, you could come in and experience their brand as like a whole. When you go to a Serve & Sport, which is, by far one of the greatest retailers in our industry, or you go to a skate shop, down the street, you're just getting bits and pieces of the story. So we're really able to
a couple racks of your gear and your hats on top, and that's your space.
Right? So it's to get a consumer to come in,
rotate out a room to whoever pays for it, right? I think Hurley has some of that room at one point, but that costs a lot of money to get your own space at the Surf & Sport. But if you go into your own, you get to feel the vibe of that company.
Yeah, you control everything.
Right.
And so you get totally immersed once you step into that door. Is you're getting to experience like Ruka as a whole and not just bits and pieces.
Yeah, I think back as a kid, growing up in Ventura, we used to go to the Great Pacific Iron Works, which was Patagonia's headquarters, right?
Yeah.
And well before Patagonia became the brand that they are today, when I was a kid, when you went into the wood floor, old buildings in this environment where it was the Patagonia shop, they had multiple buildings depending on what the practice was you were looking at. If you were a mountain climber, you went into the mountain climber building. If you were a skier, snowboarder, you went into the ski snowboard section. If you went if you were to look at an athlete, they had their running and other stuff in another building.
Yeah.
And so that I will never forget that. And the things they hung on the walls and the feeling and the music pumping in there made you feel like you were immersed in that brand. And so your shops have that feel. The Rip Curl shop here in Huntington on 5th Street kind of gives me that feel like I'm in Australia. I've got that scene, and I relate to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a balance. I mean, the core business model is so needed, and it is in this day and age not just important, but they're growing. There's a demand to get that that connection back.
Sure.
Like people are striving. I mean, they may still shop online, they may still like get something because it's a deal, but
it's the experience. So they call it an experiential model, right? And so the restaurants are the same thing, right? Restaurant chains lose a little, but people still go out to eat to the little restaurants because they're looking for that experience in the environment. And so retail's not dead is the message here. It's more about the experience, and it's building that immersive branding experience with your product that's making the difference. For sure.
We we're gonna, I mean, our focus at all of our internal meetings is core. Like that's the importance. If core goes away, brands go away. And it's not, at a personal level, it's at a corporate level. I mean, we still need, to balance, online to direct to vertical to core. And it's a big moving puzzle, and you got to make sure that you're taking care of, all avenues of income and retail.
For sure. It's easy for everybody to go online and buy stuff. And I see a lot of folks going to the stores, and they look. I do it. I look, and then I'm out of the store on my phone looking to see if I can buy it for $10 cheaper online. But I looked at that product, and it's that product that I'm going to buy. And it's the experience, and I think that's very, very smart. So I'm glad to see the action sports business here, in Orange County cranking. I've done business with Quicksilver and Hurley in the past, from what I do in my business, and I'm glad to see them growing. I remember Quicksilver in particular when they were back on the hill in Newport, and one warehouse in the back, and remember the move to HB to do all of that, and they just crank. So it's awesome to see Ruka continuing at it with the same core group of guys and principals, and I'm excited about your retail play here. And Jay, you're one of the most connected guys in the bro network, I would call it, than anyone I know. I've got friends in the industry. I talked to people like Mike Dunlop and others that I mentioned your name. They're like, oh, I know Jay. And everybody says the exact same thing. So good on you for that, and keeping that brand out there. Good luck with the podcast.
Yeah, thank you. It's fun.
Sure to see you at the HB Locals Only contest every year.
Yes.
Yeah. You and Vandermeulen, I think, are trying to beat each other for the record of.
I don't compete very often. There's only a couple of local events I might do, and it's usually just for fun, and get the family down there and do like a beach day. Yeah,
awesome. Well, thanks for taking the time. Good luck with late night and Chalky.
Thank you. Come listen to our podcast. It's fun. It's about core surf retail. It's about anything and everything to do with surf. We talk to all facets of all industries relating to surf.
And one last question for you. If you could go to any surf spot in the world that you've been to in the past, where would it be?
Wow.
Given that it's a good day, right?
Good day. There are so many good ways. That's a tough one. I'd say Cloudbreak to J Bay to Macaronis and Indo to Pipeline on a back door on a bit. I don't know.
Wow.
I mean, there's just too many choices.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to going to some of those places someday.
Yes.
Take care, Jay. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Hey, Mike here. Hope you liked this boardroom session. Please check back to your future sessions as we're recording a new one every month. If you want to reach out, look for me on LinkedIn or send me a note at mike@sidepath.com. That's Mike at SIDEPATH.com.